Mhm.
So to start off, I was wondering, what would you say really compels us to protect and preserve our environment?
Oh, well, I think there's probably two different ways to think about that. Some people are compelled to protect the environment because they believe that the environment has intrinsic value, is what we call it. That the environment deserves to be protected just because it has its own inherent value. I think so. That's one way to look at it. The other way is I think people are motivated to protect the environment because it benefits us. A good environment is healthier for us. Less pollution obviously, creates healthier people and healthier communities, cleaner water. So I think both the utilitarian view as well as the intrinsic value view.
So how would you describe the intrinsic value of nature as opposed to something like the economic value?
Well, I think the intrinsic value is more of an appreciation of the kind of inherent importance and significance and value of life, living things. And it's kind of there's a sense of humility, I guess, or humbleness that, people might have about our place in nature and our significance on Earth. And, certainly people who, have that kind of view about the intrinsic value of nature feel like nature is, you know, just as important as we are in many ways. Certainly if people weren't on Earth, nature would continue to exist, um, and it, predates us by a long time, and it probably will postdate us by a long time.
So how then do we balance our economic needs and progress with that of the planet's?
Yeah, I think the best solution there is to align those two things. If we can find ways to, make money, to increase our quality of life, to improve our security and social cohesion in a way that also protects the environment. That's the sweet spot. That's what we really want to do, is align those two goals, not think of them as competing with one another. We don't want to think you either improve the economy or you save nature. We want to, like, how do we save nature and improve the economy simultaneously? So that's what we need to do. And there are great, endless examples of how we can do that. Thinking about, transitioning to a more renewable energy economy that, will continue to provide us with the energy that we need, but do it in a way that is more aligned with, the resources that are renewable, like sunlight and air and wind and things like that.
So along with protecting organisms and such, do you feel that is there a differing moral status among different animals and plants or even like rivers?
Hmm. I certainly, and I think there are many different viewpoints on that, and some of those are, people individually have different thoughts on that, and then different cultures have different thoughts on that. I do a lot of work with some of the indigenous, North American cultures, like the Cherokee Nation, and certainly, most indigenous cultures do ascribe some, you know, sense of identity and life to not just other living things like you mentioned, animals and plants, but to, abiotic things like rivers and streams and natural springs. Even rocks and geology sometimes are given a personhood, if you want to think of it that way, an identity. you know, Me personally, actually, this kind of gets out of my area of expertise, but a lot of people, who have religious, views certainly see, you know, the creator embodied in, all things on earth. So that's another way of thinking about that as well.
So with how you've studied like ethnobotany, why like nowadays it seems that the traditional connection between culture and plants has like it's been degraded somewhat. Is that just something that comes with our progress to a more technological society, or is that something that was lost?
I don't think we've lost it completely. You're right that it certainly has been, you know, um, diminished in many ways, but but I work very hard in my classes and in the work that I do to make sure that we're not completely losing that connection. And I think there's lots of different ways to for us to connect with nature. One of the things that I've been doing a lot of work with lately is the idea of biophilic design. Have you heard that term? Bio?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Biophilia is a term that describes humans in kind of innate desire to have connection with nature, to be outside, to see plants and animals, to bird watch and things like that. And then biophilic design is designing our built environment in ways that allow people to have that opportunities to connect with nature. So it's thinking about creating a network of parks and street trees along our city streets, and just all of those opportunities that we can bring nature into our environment. Um, and that's so that, that's the kind of work that I'm, to me, in studying ethnobotany and recognizing that people have always valued plants and animals and what they do for us, and the meaning behind them, but now trying to use that to, in our modern day, to try to create those opportunities, even in downtown environments and cities and things like that.
So with human construction and development, how do you think like home and landowners, how do you think they should contribute or can contribute to the ecological communities around them?
Ah, yeah. Let's see if I've got a book here that I can show you. It might be in my other bookshelf, but there's a book by Doug Tallamy called "Bringing Nature Home," and the point that he makes in that book is that the most important thing that people can do in their own yards is plant native plants and don't use a whole lot of pesticides, because all of our native fauna, insects, birds, pollinators, even small mammals, they're going to depend on the the nectar and the seeds and the fruits and all of the other products that are being produced by our native flora. So that's what people should be doing, trying to minimize. Not I don't ever tell people that they need to get rid of their lawn, but you should minimize the amount of lawn so that you only have as much lawn as you need for throwing the frisbee or playing with your dog or whatever it is. But then the rest of your yard, convert that to native meadow, or plant native forest trees and get an understory of shrubs growing underneath it that will produce fruit and berries. So that's what I would suggest.
So for invasive species, then is there an ethical way to combat them?
Yeah. Well, different invasive species do require some different techniques to effectively remove them. Um, so something like Chinese privet, which is one of our worst invasive exotic species, if it's established and mature, the most effective way to remove it and eradicate it is to cut the trunk about 6 inches above the ground, haul off all of the trunk and foliage, and maybe stockpile that and let it compost or burn it, and then paint the fresh cut stump with a very the concentrated application of Roundup. And I know Roundup is a bad chemical, but with careful application and only getting it right on the fresh cut stump, it will kill the roots of that Chinese privet, and that should prevent it from resprouting and coming back. You know, that's for that's a hard one to get rid of. A lot of invasive species can be removed mechanically by hand, pulling them up, or even using other mechanical equipment. There's trade-offs though, because when you're mechanically removing things, you're disturbing the soil. You might be opening up the soil for invasion by other invasive species. And so, I think there's not a perfect answer to that, but we need to try to be responsible to do, to effectively remove the invasive species, do it without causing other problems or damaging other plant species, and just try to be careful about it.
Yeah. What do you feel with things like that, or just protecting the environment in general? What do you feel is, if there is one, do you think what is the obligation of governments or academics like yourself in the protection of the environment?
Oh yeah, well, I, as far as people like myself who are involved in research and education, I think our responsibility is to, continue to study this information and make sure that we know what the right strategies are, so that we can be effective in doing the right thing. We should develop, I think government, their responsibility is to, um, study the science that's being produced by researchers and develop policy that is informed by good, rigorous, peer-reviewed science, and also, um, develop policies that establish a direction for us to go that is aligned with the values of the public. So we want a cleaner environment, we want cleaner water, we want to limit pollution. So government should be thinking about policies that achieve those goals and base those policies on the good kind of rigorous science that's being produced by researchers.
So, how do you think anthropocentrism can be challenged by our like increasingly acquisitive society and like the world that we live in now?
Hmm. Well, you know, have you heard the term the Anthropocene?
I believe I have, but I'm not sure.
So there's these different eras of life on Earth, the Holocene and Pleistocene and so forth, and so now um, people are, I guess, geologists and historians are talking about this as the Anthropocene, meaning that we are in a period of time that the Earth itself, the environment itself, is shaped by the actions of people. So we are like the driving force in the change of the planet. So that's why they're calling it that. So all of that is to say that um, I think you know I think we are anthropocentric in the sense that we think about ourselves first. When we talk about sustainability, we're not talking necessarily about sustaining a particular animal species. We're talking about sustaining humanity on Earth, and I think that's okay. I think we need to recognize that that in order to sustain humanity, we need to be good stewards of and also make sure that we are preserving the ecosystem services provided by nature. So I generally think it's okay to take kind of a selfish perspective on the environment if you can come to the conclusion that protecting the environment is beneficial to us. Like that's a pretty powerful motivator, I think, to get people to want to protect the environment.
So, with that, do you feel that human overpopulation is an environmental problem, or if not, do you think it will ever become one?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's well, we're at 7.9 billion people in the world today, and estimates are that we'll probably start to level out human population around 10 billion by sometime this century. That's a lot of people, and so I think everyone expects that human population won't continue to grow beyond 10 billion, probably, or much beyond that. However, the big impact is going to be that 7 billion of those 7.9 billion are striving to achieve a lifestyle and a quality of life that is equivalent to what we have here in the United States. So the footprint and the consumption of resources, energy and water and food and everything else, materials for building, that is going to have to be you know uh, provided to those countries and communities that are increasing their quality of life. That's going to be the big impact. So I think part of the solution to that is that developed countries like the United States and European countries really need to be helping developing countries achieve that quality of life, but in a way that is much more efficient and sustainable and environmentally friendly than the way that we did it here. We don't want every country to have to go through the polluting fossil fuel driven energy production phase that we went through, with all the pollution that came with it and climate change impacts that came with it. But we can help them kind of leapfrog over that and get to a more renewable power sources that can still provide them with energy, but in a clean way. So
That's all I have. I didn't want it to be too long, but thank you. That was very informative. That's just what I needed. Thank you.
good. What is this is for a class research project, or what are you working on?
Yes. Yeah, we have a semester long project for my AP environmental class, and he has like, you have to get 100 points out of it. And there are different projects that have values at points, but you can suggest your own for a certain number of points. So I decided I wanted to do an interview.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'm glad you found me, and I'm glad this worked out. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email me. I'd be glad to answer by email, or if you want to get on Zoom again if you need to at any point, just let me know.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, good luck. Thanks. Bye.